Welcome back to another edition of the Insurtech Building Blocs podcast. My name's Tim Robinson. I'm joined by my co-host, Cory Schmidt. He did a fantastic job on our last podcast while I was absent. So, Cory, thanks for that. Sounded great.
Absolutely. Happy to have you back.
Yeah. I'm excited and think we have just awesome guests today. Really excited to have this conversation. And Cory, you're just coming back from family vacation, right? You guys got away for a little break.
I am, yes. We made our first trip to Europe. We went to Spain for 3 stops, 3 different cities in Spain. It was really amazing. My wife and 2 daughters. So we had a great time exploring the area, and I think we're gonna have to go back. It wasn't enough time. It never is.
That's amazing. That's an area that I'd love to visit. So we'll definitely have to get some insights from you and definitely get some lessons on where we should focus some of our time when we go over. But yeah, it's exciting. And our guest today is Dwane McFerrin. He is SVP Medicare Solutions at Senior Market Sales, or maybe otherwise known as SMS. And Dwane's responsible for the strategic direction of the Medicare product line, carrier relationships, and a team of marketing consultants. And, it's really a lot of fun. I mean, some of the leadership team of AgencyBloc had the opportunity to go over, spend time with the SMS team. I think it was a couple months ago at this point, maybe a month and a half ago, and really learned a lot about the business, really got to know the leadership team as well. And we thought it'd be a fantastic opportunity to have Dwane join us and talk about what's going on with the CMS proposed contract year 2025 changes and maybe also share a little bit more about senior market sales at the same time. So Dwane, welcome.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
I think we missed one important point of Dwane's background. It's also tour guide extraordinaire, like probably one of the best tours I've been a part of. Dwayne is a encyclopedia of knowledge as it relates to SMS in the industry. And I'll have to say, I learned a lot, and it was great to see, what it looks like inside of an organization. And Dwayne, you did an amazing job of giving us the tour and also just background on the industry. So we're really excited to chat with you today.
We're glad that you could visit.
Yeah, I think the amount of insight and knowledge that Dwane shared without cue cards or any prompts was, I don't know that I'd ever be able to attain that level of knowledge. So Dwane, that was a lot of fun and certainly learned a lot. So now you're in the hot seat as Cory and I were talking about, but the reality is we know that you're involved in a number of things within SMS and also beyond. So you want to give us some of your background from your perspective, what the last roughly 3 decades, is that right, have looked like, and what you've done?
Actually this year marks 41 years that I've been in the Medicare industry.
Wow.
So yeah, been around the block. So I spent 17 years at Mutual of Omaha, 5 at Physicians Mutual, and the last 18 at Senior Market Sales.
Good guess. Definitely have seen changes along the way.
It's an amazing industry. You think about it, we're recession proof, we're pandemic proof. The demographic march has just continued. And 15 years ago, only 1 out of 4 seniors could buy a private plan. And now it's more like 3 out of 4. So with that's come growth in the industry. A lot of competition has come in. Even private equity has found its way into our market. It has exploded in terms of opportunity, and there have been a lot of newer entrants for sure. You go back when I first started, it was Medicare Supplement. That was about all you could be sold. So, but with the creation of Medicare Advantage and standalone Part D, really 3 out of 4 people you meet that are over 65 are eligible for a private plan.
Yeah, and so that obviously has reshaped the landscape, right? As far as how you can buy the products that you have available to you as the consumer. What do you think over the last, call it let's call it the last 5 years? We've had a lot of interesting events happen in the world, from a pandemic to some significant economic shifts, maybe an election in there as well. What are, if you were to talk about the last 5 years, what do you think are some of the biggest changes that you've seen?
Well, certainly the private equity working its way into the market, the Joe Namath commercials, the television commercials have been nonstop. The number of unwanted calls that seniors experience, has certainly changed how the regulators look at our space, the churn, and even the complaints. So as you have more and more newer players, we've had newer challenges. But at the same time, we've seen technology continue to grow. Before the pandemic, technology at SMS was considered a novelty by many, and then all of a sudden it became a necessity. And if an agent wasn't working with multiple layers of technology, whether that was a CRM, a commission reconciliation system, a quoting and enrollment tool, if they didn't have that during the pandemic, I don't know how they would have been able to do business. Then you had phone recording and having that type of technology. So tech has certainly changed, but in the background, we've had challenges. We've had problems that have gotten the attention of regulators and legislators. And so while it's been an attractive market, it's also had some bad actors that have come in. And so there's some cleanup that's needed, even though the regulations that are being proposed are way too sweeping. I can understand why change is needed to make sure that the senior is really treated in the right way. And we really shouldn't be treating a senior as an asset. We should be treating a senior as a client. And so some correction in the industry is needed.
So, Dwayne, as you see the proposed changes as they are today, I think you used the words way too sweeping, but just to give, the listeners a good sense of kind of the high level changes that have been proposed, can you help us understand kind of what that looks like?
Um, well, some of the changes don't really affect agent marketing that much, like prior authorization, which is a good thing. Too many cases where a senior is really subject to prior authorization. And if they were on a regular fee for service plan, it wouldn't be challenged and or result in a delay in being treated. So some of these proposed regulations are really pro-consumer. But as we look at our business itself, I've always thought of the broker as the one that's servicing that client year over year, treating them like a client, not an asset. And so changes that are being proposed that would potentially either raise the cost of doing business substantially for the agent or reduce the support they're getting from their FMO ultimately would change the landscape of our industry. And we already have the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act that's impacting seniors. And that wasn't done on a bipartisan basis. And as a result, I'm expecting 2025 to be disruptive just on the Inflation Reduction Act, on premiums, formularies, maybe even the network on standalone Part D plans. And the Inflation Reduction Act will also make Medicare Advantage plans. It'll be difficult for them between that and their reimbursement rates to support zero premium plans. So something's got to give. I don't know if it will be extra benefits or if we'll start seeing some premiums be introduced. I mean, so many agents are used to having a $0 Medicare Advantage plan. Some carriers may find that to be a real challenge for this upcoming year. So there's a fair amount of disruption happening just with the Inflation Reduction Act alone. If we go to the CMS proposed regulations, it would put a lot of costs on the back of the agent, whether it's phone recording, AHIP, possibly appointment fees. It would also limit their incomes. It might create a lid on what you can get for, say, an HRA fee or a co-op, possibly. It could affect the ability for the agent to exceed what fair market value would be. Because I think CMS is intent on saying fair market value is X. So there's been some proposals that perhaps that fair market value increases by $31, but then with that will come additional expenses that will come with it. We're not quite sure what CMS meant on the FMO overrides. Some people could interpret the $31 was toward the FMO. Some others would look at it as that was the fee that would go to the agent to offset some of their expenses. A lot of the regulations focus on the carrier ultimately contracting with the agent. And with that, all the support that would be multiple carrier support possibly could be lost. You think of quoting and enrollment tools. Who can support quoting and enrollment tools if you're a carrier? The carrier can only really represent themselves. They can't represent all the other opportunities that are out there. So that objective technology support possibly would be at stake. So those regulations will come out in final form soon. I know that the Office of Management and Budget now have those final regs. So we expect them to be issued, if not this month, then early April. And we'll know for sure what the implications are. So in the meantime, we've been trying to tell our story. What is the role of the FMO? What's the role of an MGA and an agency? What services do they provide? And how important are they to the distribution system of the Medicare agent and the beneficiaries? It's so important that seniors get really good, sound support and tools, and that when an agent has a problem, they're not one of 80,000 calling into a help desk, but rather they can get their support from their local FMO, and so they can handle the problems of the seniors. So our concern would be is that maybe fewer agents would be in the market, that there wouldn't be as broad of a representation for multiple carriers of an agent, and it could impact the cost of products, the premium that's charged, and ultimately the consumer would have fewer choices and less access to an agent. It could put a lot of businesses out of business. And I don't think that was the intent of the regulation, is to put people out of business. So that's our hope, that the powers that be will listen and see that we do play an important role. The FMO plays an important role. So does an MGA. Any intermediary between the agent and the carrier plays an important role in helping support that agent. And I don't know if from the initial proposed regs if that was really clear. And so there's been 10,000 petitions signed, been 1,000 comment letters sent to CMS. I know I've had my opportunity to talk to CMS, have an opportunity to talk to Office of Management and Budget later this week. Been to Washington to meet with, say, the House Ways and Means key staffer, Senator Grassley, and I know a number of our competitors have been very active trying to tell our story, whether they're a call center, a brokerage operation, is say, what is our role? What do we do? How do we provide value? What's the reason for being, if you will, of an FMO? But we're about at the finish line now for all of that.
Yeah, that's great perspective. Really, really helpful. I like how you've broken that down. I mean, part of it, one way I think about these type things is what what is the catalyst, right? Why bring forward this proposed change to the compensation models and some of the other things? So love your perspective there too, is ultimately what was the catalyst that got us here, and what is CMS trying to solve for?
A couple things. I think those Joe Namath commercials and all of the television commercials, it wasn't just Joe Namath, that were very confusing, but also persuasive. To some degree, didn't even talk about insurance. Most of it was about extra benefits. And I think we've confused, social services with insurance topics. And I think that's added to the level of confusion. And there were so many that it resulted in a lot of churn, a lot of commercials that have resulted in a consumer calling multiple 800 numbers and literally the business jumping all over. So I think that's part of it, was just the marketing itself. The Inflation Reduction Act is certainly going to have a impact going forward as well. And there's been a lot of complaints that have gone into Medicare. And so unfortunately, when CMS gets involved, they tend to solve a problem like that with a sledgehammer. And, they don't know who is at fault. So they just kind of just come in with a sledgehammer and get the attention of the entire industry. So they've created a category called third-party marketing organization, also labeled TPMO. And they've included a lead vendor, which isn't even contracted with the federal government, along with a mega call center, along with a brokerage agency, calling them all FMOs. And with that, they've implemented or proposed a number of regulations. And that's that sweeping part where you really want to solve specific problems, but it's done pretty sweeping. And in September, the Senate Finance Committee started really looking at the finances behind what the carriers were providing to the distribution side. And then you had in October, you had the Senate Finance Committee holding a hearing. And they brought in small carriers, and small carriers feel like the field isn't level, that large carriers can provide more resources and support. And to some extent, they're buying the business, and the smaller carriers aren't properly represented. You also have ship offices that really think we should be talking to the consumer as your family and not treating them like an asset. And I think if you have a short call, a short introduction, education, and then a quick enrollment, that's really not servicing the customer, especially year over year, where now you don't even know who you bought from. So I think there's some legitimate reasons why the Senate Finance Committee, had their hearing. But then shortly thereafter, CMS issued their proposed regulations. And their proposed regulations were about 450 pages or so. And it was quite an impact. And it really galvanized the insurance industry to say, are we really telling our story well? And what will be the actual administrative fee? And so one of the things I'm hoping and expecting to come out of this is that not only will there be a fair market value for agents, but I think there will be a fair market value for FMOs and MGAs and anyone that's providing support. And if that amount is high enough, then we can continue to offer the services that we do today. But if they gut it, that's really an existential threat, really, to how agents are supported around the country. And so I'm hoping for the best, but of course, you always have to plan for the worst as well. But we should know soon enough how that's all going to turn out. And then a little bit of a wild card was in January, CMS, or it's actually the Senate Finance Committee, excuse me, reached out to 4 mega call centers and 1 brokerage office and said, please answer the questions about how you generate leads, a lot about your finances, show us your commercials or how you get in front of people, what your best responding ads are. And how they responded may play a factor in the outcome, but we don't know how they responded. Those were not public comment letters. They were private responses back to the Senate Finance Committee. But that's a little bit of a wild card that makes the final outcome a little unpredictable.
Dwane, the comment you made around, gutting the administrative fees, obviously we know all too well all the support that the IMOs provide to the distribution channel in terms of, quoting and enrollment technology, marketing support, all of the things that they need to be successful as a business. I mean, a lot of these are, 1, 2, broker agencies that don't have that kind of, budget or support. As the changes are proposed currently, do you read it that basically that would go away in its entirety in terms of any kind of like direct compensation that the carriers are able to provide to the IMOs in that realm?
Well, if you read it one way, that would be the case. And I'm hopeful that that's not how it will turn out, that there will be a fair market value, there will be an equal amount. So it would be leveling the field as the small carriers have requested. But hopefully it's at the level that we could continue to provide the support we do. We've spent millions of dollars on quoting and enrollment and CRM and just the technology side of our business. And so that possibly an agent would have to pay for those services themselves if they're not coming from the FMO. Also, the agent is likely to lose their HRA fees. If they're getting a value-based care referral fee or co-op, some of those could be at risk. So it's not just the FMO, but it's really how the agent does business that's at stake.
Interesting. And you also mentioned the smaller regional carriers, which we hear about this actually pretty often as well, which is it doesn't feel like they're getting a place at the table as it relates to like getting their products in front of consumers. And so would it be true that CMS is trying to your point, like level the playing field so that those regional carriers have an equal chance at getting their products in front of these consumers? Is that sort of the motivation?
At least to the point where there's no bidding war, right? That
Got it.
financially, the agent or the FMO, there's no incentive to represent one over the other. Interestingly, not all small carriers even want to do business with an FMO. Or some pay more on HRA fees than the large carriers do. So it's not like a 100% cut and dry as you look at it. What we really have is, how does the consumer buy? How many carriers does an agent want to certify for and represent? And it's really hard to represent the entire industry because just the hours of certification alone would be taxing. And a lot of consumers buy off a brand name. And so if they don't recognize the name of the company, that would be a disadvantage for those smaller regional plans, just because we see on the Medicare Supplement side, probably 80% of our sales go to the brand name carriers, and they all pay the same. So levelizing the commission on Medicare Advantage, while that may be an outcome, I'm not sure that will change consumer behavior all by itself, because you say, hey, I represent these three carriers, for example, and two you've never heard of before, and you mention one that you have heard of before. So the consumer says, well, tell me more about the one I've heard. So I think the advertising of the big carriers, the brand name, the brand equity that they've established carries a lot of weight on the consumer. It isn't just the financial side of how much money does an agent earn. I think it's the consumer behavior, which really isn't being addressed with those proposed regs. When it comes to compensation, I don't think it affects the consumer's thought process.
Makes sense. But I do think your point is well taken, that there shouldn't be a motivation around, driving all your business to like one or two carriers, right? Because they're paying a lot more in bonus or something related to volume. And it sounds like you agree that's a
Right.
good change that's being
I
proposed.
think so. I think I think we need to treat the customer like our client, not an asset. So it shouldn't be driven by how much money do I make, but it should be driven by what's in the best interest of my client. And so that's why we provide the quoting and enrollment tools, so that you can really solve for, are my drugs in the formulary? Is my doctor in the network? What are my out-of-pocket costs? What extra benefits are available that I would use? One of the proposed regs would be, is mid-year, the carrier would be required to tell a consumer that, how much of those extra benefits have you actually used, as a reminder that there is additional benefits available to you. That would drive up utilization. By driving up utilization, it would probably drive down the number of extra benefits that are offered, because the high utilization would result in higher costs. So yeah, there's some really good changes that are being proposed that are really pro-consumer, but you would like to think that the agent and the close advisor relationship that they have with the client doesn't get disturbed in the process.
And it sounds like we're recording this in the middle of March, but it sounds like we'll have a ruling on this, right? Something more tangible in the not too distant future.
I'm expecting as early as the 25th of March.
Okay.
Maybe it'll go into the first week or two of April. So yeah, it could be very, very soon.
And what comes out of there, I guess it could vary. Probably could vary, right? It could be, here's some additional insights or clarifications, and then we need more time, or it could be something more definitive. Is that accurate? Is that the way it can work?
Well, once the final regs are published, then that's kind of baked in for
Yeah.
January 1st effective dates for
Okay.
2025. And so, of course, once a year they can make change, or
Mhm.
legislation can be proposed. And so that's certainly an option if the outcome of the proposed regs turns final and it really does have a negative impact on our industry. Then it probably needs to be solved with legislation. And we have a number of elected officials that have already questioned CMS about why are you doing what you're doing? What's your justification? So if they go too far, I'm sure there will be an outcry, and that will likely result in legislation being proposed. In the end, it's really the consumer that's
Right.
impacted. And if agents leave the industry, that's going to reduce consumer access. And in
Right.
particular, concern would be in rural areas where there may only be a few agents in a particular county. And if one or two of them decide to switch to another product line or to retire, it really would impact in a big way consumers. A lot of consumers go to Medicare workshops and or webinars. And if you just have fewer distributors in the space because of the onerous regulations, that's not necessarily good for the industry. But we found ways to adapt. When I think back a year or two ago, phone recording was controversial, but yet we found a way to adapt to it, right? And we've had, 48-hour rule and scope of appointment. We've had a number of challenges. We've all found ways, in many cases, of using technology, the applied use of technology to solve a lot of these business problems. So I think that will happen again, provided that they don't come in too much with a sledgehammer and literally destroy the support system that's been built over the years. Their carriers literally can't do the job if the FMOs and the agencies and the MGAs, if they didn't exist. I don't know how the carriers would do business. I don't know how the consumer would benefit from a scenario like that.
It's interesting you bring up the technology side. I know from our conversations with SMS, it's obvious you guys have invested significantly in technology, Dwayne. And as you mentioned, I think since 2020, obviously there's a lot more reliance on technology. I mean, people are working from anywhere, everywhere. I mean, our own company is entirely, virtual at this point, AgencyBloc. And so obviously we have offices, but we rarely, use those as a regular, meetup spot. It's more of a sporadic thing today. So when you think about all the things that SMS is doing for your agent distribution channel, like what portion of that from a budget and time and resource perspective is allocated to technology specifically?
Well, we have over 50 developers on staff. So that alone gives you a pretty good sense that it's not just we're signing a contract with a vendor. And we do that too, right? So we spend millions just working with vendors, not counting our own employees. And what we've done at SMS, we've taken the best from the vendors, and through API, we've brought it into our platform to really save time. That's been the real difference maker. Is we found ways to save time for the producer. And how much time do you want to spend on Part D, for example? Many agents would say, it kills me. It's a time suck. And so what we've done is we found solutions to do that. And we're really proud that, now we're part of AgencyBloc, where our quoting and enrollment platform is integrated instead of standalone. So if you're working on AgencyBloc, that data will carry over into Lead Advantage Pro, our proprietary system, and vice versa. So yeah, we continue to expand and grow with our technology. We don't expect that will stop, but we definitely have some headwinds with the regulations that are being proposed. And I'm confident that we'll find a way, as we have been for 42 years, to stay in business.
Tim, I'm not sure. I feel like Dwayne might have just made a press release about an integration between our platforms. I'm not sure though.
I love it. I think that happened and couldn't be more excited. Dwayne, what you describe is really what the Agency Block team, what we're striving to do is help our customers be more successful, right? Be able to spend more time with their clients, be more profitable so they can reinvest in their business, so they can reach a broader market as well. And that you don't do that alone. You do that with a really strong partner network. And we're really excited to have the integration with LA Pro and have a deeper relationship with SMS so that we can ensure that collectively we're bringing the best solutions and the best value prop possible forward.
Well, there's a lot of CRM platforms out there, and we're pretty picky on who we work with. So we went through a thorough process, and we were just very proud to be working with AgencyBloc and the Radius Bob, programs that you also have.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dwayne. And I know we even just in the time we've been working together to try to understand the crossover, it's obvious that SMS has a really successful, significant distribution channel of agents, and even in a short amount of time, there's folks reaching out and asking about, when is this platform integration, going to be live, and when can I use it? I think that it's obvious the value that LA Pro provides from a quoting and enrollment perspective. And I also think it's amazing that SMS as an organization is recognizing that they need to help connect the dots for agents, because that's always been a big mantra of ours, is how do we connect the dots to all the solutions that they need. We know we'll never be everything to everyone, and we're not trying to be, but obviously we need to connect those dots for our customers, for the agents, so they can be successful. And I think this is just another dot to connect in that realm.
Well, there's a lot that we're working on. Quoting and enrollment is what we've been known for, but also now it's the ability to integrate with really a great CRM platform that includes drip marketing. We're also looking at educational tools that help a consumer learn more about Medicare so that an agent can be more efficient with their time, or be virtual so that it's 24/7, not just when the working hours that I'm in the office. So we continue to look for solutions that really empower an agent, not to go around an agent, but rather go through the agent to help them grow their business, and to apply technology where technology can help their business grow.
That's awesome. I think it's exciting to hear the things that SMS is really focused on around making agents more effective as well. Obviously, their time is better spent helping consult with their customers than it is, things that could be more self-service, and like you mentioned, some of the educational pieces I think have been maybe missing from the industry, at least on a scaled perspective. Like it's complicated. Like I recently was trying to just even understand all the differences between the kinds of Medicare products that are available to consumers. Like it's a complex product to navigate.
Certainly, Medicare Advantage is, and Part D has got its own challenges. Medicare Supplements, another product line that we support, and there's fewer choices for seniors in Medicare Supplement. It's essentially G and N, maybe some high deductible G. So we're also working on how can we impact that through proprietary products, or even just getting a change in how Medicare operates to where more Medicare Supplement plan choices are available to seniors. So trying to work within the industry, carriers as well as our competitors and other stakeholders, to say, how do we improve our industry, and how does the consumer benefit?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of opportunity and is generated from that, right? Is how do you, if you're Corey's really good at articulating this, but if you keep the customer at the center of what you do, right? What products are you creating? What's your value prop? How can you create a greater value prop, value story for your customers? The success will come, right? If you stay focused on that and are really intentional about it, amazing things happen. And I think that is shown by the success of both organizations. And that's why I also, and I know we've said it a couple times, but that's why I think it's so great to be working together, or more closely together, in the solutions that we're bringing to the market. So really appreciate it. And I know when we were sitting in the office together and you were talking about CMS, the legislation and the conversations and the role that you've played in that, Corey and I got back in the car, and, we continued the conversation, and said, boy, we really need to get Dwane on the podcast, and really appreciate you coming on. Really insightful, thoughtful comments. And who knows, we may have to do a follow-up after this gets published, after the changes get published. So if you'd be up for it, I'll put you on the spot, but if you'd be up for it, we would love to have you back on.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be back on with good news.
That's right. That's right. So that may shape the conversation, but we would very much appreciate that.
Well, very good. Thank you very much for having me, Tim and Corey. Appreciate it.
Thanks
Hey,
so much,
Corey.
Dwayne.
Yeah, Corey, I guess I'm going to see you along the trail here somewhere in person. So Look forward to doing that. We have a couple things. We're going to be at Medicare and
That's right.
a couple other venues. So if any of our listeners are at those events or even our own block builder event, please swing by. Love to talk to you, and please keep the feedback and comments coming as well. With that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Appreciate it, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much.